It's time to bring up our special guest of the day. And thank you again, Mike Picard, for doing that. And he'll be back with us next month for a little trivia question. The Greater Phoenix Economic Council team works collaboratively to support expansion and relocation projects for companies considering Greater Phoenix. Please join me in welcoming today the President and CEO, Mr. Chris Camacho. Chris. Good to have you here, Chris. Welcome.
Nice to see you this morning.
You heard that? Camacho.
You like that?
It's Camacho Macho Man.
It is. I've heard that before.
Yeah. Ah.
You know, Bill Jibjiniak told me you were kind of funny, but you're actually pretty funny.
Hey, thanks. Thank you. Thank you, sorta. No more dinners for Chris Camacho. All right, hey, you're by far a snappy dresser. Thanks for kicking off 2019 the right way.
Hey, I'm trying.
You got the thin, the cut. All my pants are skinny pants, and they're not supposed to be. But you look good. I don't know, I have no idea why I'm complimenting on your fashion. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with your business.
I was going to tell you about my tailoring life, but we can save that for another day.
Yeah, let's over coffee later.
He told me not to do the skinny pants because my calves are too fat. That's what he told me. Anyway, like you said, another time.
Thanks,
right.
sir.
You're the funny guy.
Thanks for proving this comedy ain't easy.
That's right. Yeah, that was good. That was well played. All right, so what do I do for my day job?
Yeah, what's your day job?
Try to get us back on track here.
Yeah.
So I run Greater Phoenix Economic Council, and we are a public-private partnership focused on driving the region's economy. So imagine getting to work with 22 mayors and the Board of Supervisors, all of the university system, community college leadership, and about 160 private sector companies, all focused on advancing the region's economic position. That's recruiting companies from around the world. It's driving the brand strategy. As an example of the New York Times here next week, talking about the technology transformation that's happening across the region. So a lot of my work, if you Googled GPEC, you would see us in a variety of the national publications, but also working with people like Bill and Chris Brady and the mayor here in Mesa, talking about how do we cultivate a strategy that creates more economic diversity and grows high-wage jobs for the citizens of Mesa and the rest of the region.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm looking at a number here, $14.8 billion in capital investment since '89. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what's happening around the world today, the projects in manufacturing, R&D are becoming much more capital intensive. And so you'll hear me talk, and I get on my pulpit a little bit about how we're preparing the next generation workforce in applied learning. Because today's environment to recruit companies, so if you're talking about, say, Microsoft or Apple or any one of these global companies today, there's so many facets that go into why companies make decisions. Generally, it's really about talent and talent disposition of a market, and it's about critical modern infrastructure that exists, that cities have forward-thinking policies on the books that they're investing in infrastructure. And really, it's about what a governor and legislature does to prepare a market to be pro-business. So there's a variety of different processes companies go through to analyze which market, but I can tell you, Greater Phoenix and the state of Arizona, we're one of the most attractive places to do business today.
Why is that? I mean, we always brag about our weather, but it takes more than that to attract businesses. What makes your pitch effective when you talk to these companies?
Well, it used to be about sunshine and golf and tourism and selling how easy it is to live here and be here. But today's market's vastly changed because public companies have to get a return to shareholders. So, I deal generally with the bean counters, so the CFOs, and I deal with the chief human resource officers. Those are the two people that come through my door regularly, and they're trying to understand what's the K through 20 or P through 20 even system that you're preparing future workers for the future workforce. And so we go through every community college, the types of programs they have within the system, in addition to what's happening at ASU and GCU and the other university systems here. That's the competitive advantage we have today. It's the labor disposition of the market, and we still have a very competitive cost environment, and we have a very incredible speed to market approach with our cities. So when our cities go through a development services and permit process, it might be 16 months faster than California. And so, my teams in California actually have 4 in Vegas today and 2 in California pitching companies on why to come to Metro Phoenix.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know. I mean, the process in California is just prohibitive. And does having ASU right here, that's got to be a big a big plus.
Well, I would argue Michael Crow is probably the most transformational leader in the last 10 years that has reshaped our identity as a brand, as a state's identity. When I would travel around the world to China, to Western Europe, and tell the Arizona story, going back to the 1950s, post-World War II, and how people came here, the advent of the air conditioner, and having water positions with SRP, in a strong favorable position. The one thing that people still viewed Arizona in terms of 10 years ago was that we weren't a place that had a strong sense of knowledge capital. I think ASU has dramatically changed that. There's 22,000 students in the engineering school. The community college has 265,000 students within it and is producing people really ready for industry needs. So I would tell you our labor position, along the lines of places like Metro Dallas, Metro Atlanta, and Metro Charlotte, those are kind of the four IT places across the country today, in addition to Austin.
Wow.
And so we're constantly analyzing our competitive position, but I will tell you, we're in a really unique spot, but we need to make really strategic investments in modern infrastructure and the human capital position of our market coming forward.
That's awesome. Well, it's got to help that ASU's right here and that U of A is 100 miles away. That's got to help. Where are the Sun Devil fans? I'm just kidding. So tell us a little bit. I mean, man, you're on this. Tell us a little bit. How did you end up here? What's your history? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I grew up in the St. Louis area. So when Bill and the previous mayor invited me out to the Cubs business to baseball game, I'll tell you how hard that was for me, being a Cardinal fan. But I swallowed my pride. I showed up, didn't I, Bill? And came out and somewhat cheered for whichever team was playing, because it wasn't the Cardinals. But when I looked at the opportunities that exist in Arizona, I moved out here 15 years ago, and I moved to the southwestern part of the state, to Yuma, and I ran their economic strategy in northern Mexico and southwestern Arizona for 4 years. And talk about cutting your teeth in a challenging place. 30% unemployment, transient market, largely driven by military and agriculture. And over the time I was there, we were able to bring 35 new companies to Metro Yuma at the time, and San Luis and Somerton. And my predecessor, who was the CEO of GPEC, came down, just a quick story. He came down to one of my events in Yuma, and in front of my entire board, in front of all of the public officials, said, I'm gonna steal this guy and bring him up to the big leagues in Phoenix. And I'm like, I brought him up as a guest speaker, and here he is telling everyone who pays me to leave the market. So ultimately, and my wife was like 7 months pregnant at the time, so she was like, absolutely not, we're not moving. So subsequently, 6 months later, we ended up moving to Phoenix, and the rest is history. So that was 10 years ago. I moved up here to Phoenix. 2008. What a great time to move to Phoenix. So we looked over the cliff, and then we just plummeted for 17 quarters, worked our way back, and I can tell you the resiliency of this market has changed. We're not so over-reliant on housing and consumption jobs, and we need another decade, though, of this kind of economic performance to continue to insulate ourselves against that kind of downturn.
That's awesome. Where'd you go to high school in St. Louis?
So I grew up on the Illinois side of St. Louis,
okay.
so Quincy High, yeah. So
okay.
I call myself from St. Louis, but I'm really from the Illinois side.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And so your wife said, no, we're not doing it, and you did it. You're going to tell me later how that all happened. I've never had that conversation before.
Yeah, usually don't win those conversations.
No, I know. I'm baffled. You're the first.
Yeah. It took me about 6, 7, 8 months to get through that process and continue to sell, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so you've been here how many years?
I've been in Phoenix, yeah, for 10.
So we're going on 11 years.
Yep.
Crystal ball time. Hopefully you'll be around for the next 11 years. Don't leave us. Don't go back to Yuma. Where do you see this valley? What's the GPEC outlook?
Yeah. Well, this is, I think, the most exciting time in our history as a state, and we're in a position now where the governor's making some strategic decisions about water and ensuring we have, from a scarcity management perspective, you talked about water and SRP's leadership in water, critical for our future sustainability. I do think that the economy has changed as we know it, and if anyone loves to read, you talked about kind of nerdy outlooks in the United States, there's definitely a change happening in the US where you see urban versus rural disparities. So urban markets are winning. They're winning jobs. They're winning white-collar jobs at a higher density than rural. You're also seeing urban inequity. So we're at this, I believe, crossroads where we as Greater Phoenix and the 22 cities here, we're going to have population growth. But that's not enough. We have to ensure that we're making the right kind of intentional investments, and I think the only way we get to intentional investments is if we modernize our tax code and make some hard decisions that will really propel us for the next 20 years. I will tell you The advanced industry, so your Intels, your Boeings, your corporations like that, what do they care about today? They care about modern infrastructure, they care about the quality of place in terms of communities, and they care about the pipeline of workforce. We have to have investment strategies that enable us to continue to evolve. And absent that, we're going to be a big place that's really spread out without a lot of density. And my view is that we have to make a bet right now over the next decade that will, I believe, set us on a new trajectory for the next 50 years. And a lot of that comes back to tax code modernization, because we have the tax debate going on in our state as we speak. And I think if we make some really good decisions, we're going to be, I think, much like Seattle, without some of the complexities that they're having in terms of cost. But at the same time, we're in a position where we're kind of viewed as this place between Seattle and tech and Austin and scalable growth. And that's a really good spot to be in, with a very pro-business environment and a very kind of limited regulatory environment. So my crystal ball for 19, to get back to your question, 19 I think is going to be an exceptionally solid year. So you read all the noise and the headlines. I tell you, the only thing that concerns me is corporate debt. Outside of that, and some softness in the supply chain in China and Hong Kong, outside of that, the fundamentals on jobs, unemployment, consumer confidence, everything looks pretty good for 19. So I think we're going to at least have another 3 quarters of run rate. There's 385 companies right now looking at Greater Phoenix to make major investments. So wow. I've never seen it like this.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. So what's your say? I run some big company in a heavily taxed, heavily regulated state, like, let's just say California. Mm-hmm. What's your pitch to me? Why should I come here? Give me your elevator pitch.
Yeah, well, it depends what kind of company you are, so whether you're tech or advanced manufacturing. But here's the reality is, you come to a market like Arizona, you're going to have political certainty. You're going to have a market and a government that really supports your business, stands on side and side in partnership with your business. We have cities, counties, and states that really welcome industry as opposed to regulate it. And at the same time, we're building up the critical modern infrastructure with our cities and digital, so fiber infrastructure, certainly having water, wastewater strategies that go in place. So if you want a turnkey site in Metro Phoenix, we can deliver it tomorrow and build you a state-of-the-art facility in 10 months. It's going to take you 26 months on average to do that in California. But it's all going to really come back to whether you can scale from a labor perspective, and we're one of the fastest growing markets in the United States. And at the same time, the livability aspect, my close is always, you're going to have the ability to really move to a market where you can buy twice the house for half the cost and a better quality of life. It's that simple.
That is amazing. I talk to a lot of people that move here, and they're just, if you think your home's expensive, yeah, it might be, but when you compare it to other places, it's amazing.
Especially California.
Yeah. I just talked to a guy who sold his small home in LA, in the LA area, moved to Prescott, bought a home twice the size, and put $250,000 in the bank, and thinks he's won the lottery. Mm-hmm. And that's Arizona versus what we're up against.
Yeah, I mean, how many times I get calls on my cell? I got one as we were sitting there, as you were going.
Did it ring?
No, I turned on vibrate.
Okay. All right, so go ahead.
I'll still support the food bank. If someone wants to talk to me afterwards, I'm happy to support that. So, yeah, whoever that is. But, when these calls come in, typically they're just waiting for the next regulation, the next head tax, the next gross receipts tax, the next regulatory impact to their business, and particularly small business that doesn't have all this corporate, legal infrastructure to figure out the solution. There's a lot of these second, third generation companies in Southern California that are manufacturers that are at the point now as they're handing the keys off to the next generation, and the next generation saying, you know what, I don't know if I want to run this business in California anymore. So we're seeing those kind of companies enter Greater Phoenix, and again, we're a concierge model like Carla mentioned at SRP, and Bill. We put our hands out, and we really embrace these companies, and I will tell you the concierge experience they have separates our market from just about everywhere else in the United States.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was in LA not long ago when they were actually considering, I don't know if you saw this, a text tax. So if you receive or send a text and it pings off a California tower, you get a little ding on your bill. It's like they're just looking for ways to, it's out of control. Well, it sounds like you've positioned yourself quite nicely. Let me ask you a selfish question. If you've got kids or grandkids out there, what industries should they look at? What's looking forward? Tech, I mean, that's where it is, isn't it?
Well, I think, industries related to connected devices and embedded systems. So think of this whole universe of being connected, whether it's through a watch, through a heart monitor, all of the biometrics activity that's happening in healthcare. I think healthcare is going to be a massive industry, and so that would be one. I think even here in Mesa, when I look at what's happening and what the city's done in the last decade, aerospace and defense is kind of reinventing itself. So no longer, I mean, we look at the Apaches that we all know and well out at, out at Falcon Field with Boeing, but now you have the composites division of Boeing here as headquartered here in Mesa. You have the electrical wiring unit here as well. So aerospace and defense, microelectronics, healthcare, they're all evolving into embedded systems. And I think we're going to see a revolutionary change in the community college system as well as the university systems around adaptive and applied learning, where you're now going to become a lifelong learner. And the traditional 4-year track, there'll still be those, but I think the 2-year model, and I think shifting into the K through 12 system, my goal over the next 10 years is that when you graduate from high school, you also have a dual enrollment certificate in some kind of skilled trade. And if we do that together and really modernize education, this place will be off the charts because people will want to grow here, stay here, and ultimately find their second and third jobs here, because that's one of the knocks of this market. You can find your great first job. It's hard to get promoted into your second and third job in your career here. So our job from a recruitment standpoint is to bring those jobs, but over time, we want to ensure that we can continue the pipeline so our kids and grandkids can ultimately stay here throughout their lifetime.
That's awesome. Healthcare is going to be huge. You know my healthcare plans from here on out? Bacon and whiskey. Pretty much it. Quick question, trivia question. What kind of car do you drive?
I drive an Infiniti.
Is it clean or dirty?
Very dirty.
Well, we didn't even rehearse this. We would like to thank you. By the way, how about a big round of applause for Chris Camacho? Very nice of you.
Thank you.
It's great to see somebody that's on top of your game, and you're very optimistic about what the Valley's got to offer, and thanks for being here. Thanks for taking time. One of our favorite sponsors, they're huge in the Mesa Chamber, is Cobblestone Auto Spa. They would like to present you with a $100 detail gift card to give that to your wife. Let her, tell her you bought it, and get your car detailed. You can find a Cobblestone everywhere.
Been there before, yeah.
If there's not one close to your house, get one put in somewhere. That would be a good GPEC move.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
How about a big round of applause once again? Thank you so much. Great job. Great job.